Let the tale seduce you. Let me convince you to read a book. I gave 3.5 stars. Yes, it's one of my favorite books to reread. And I will start with my first read of this book, which was not that good, and some of the things I actually don't like. When I first read it, I was in school, and I'm pretty sure it was beyond my level, either of comprehension or of language or something, because after reading it, I didn't remember any of the plot or characters. I remember like 4 or 5 distinct scenes that were like images in my head. I didn't remember any characters. They were like someone, but now I know who they are. Jonathan Harker going through the dark on a carriage. Jonathan Harker being locked in the castle of the Dracula in his room. That's by the way, Jonathan Harker is damsel in distress in this book. And no questions asked. Then Dracula crawling from the window. Something about basement door and 3 wives of Dracula. Something about boxes of dirt that might or might not have wives of Dracula there. And also Dracula going through the window to a girl, or leaving through the window from visiting a girl. That's all I remembered. And because of all the other media about Dracula that exist, which has nothing to do with the original story, or very little to do with the original story, I even was convinced at some point that, like, well, Van Helsing is not the main character with the Dracula, but there is so much talk about their relationship, like their enemies. They might have been a hunter. Like, I was very confused. So quite recently, relatively, I reread it and I was so disappointed. Not because I had high expectations, but more that it's a cultural thing. It's like influenced so much other media. And as originator of all that media, I thought it would be like, well, maybe not better than any other media, but like fundamental for that, or like strong. And it was not really that. Few of the things. First of all, I was really disappointed in the fact that we don't see Dracula that much. Yes, first arc is amazing from his point of view. It's very gothic. We go to Dracula castle and oh my god, he's evil. Will he survive? We see him. By the way, it's very interesting how Dracula in original Dracula is not this romanticized hero, not like bad guy, but with backstory or misunderstood person. No, he's actually evil, but we also kind of see how evil can be seductive, which is why I'm so mad that after this scene we don't see Dracula. We see him when he dies, and maybe once more, but actually we see the result of his action, but not him. And I understand that was probably the point. Author was going for that because characters actually don't know about vampires. Their friends just start dying and I'm like, what's going on? But I would prefer seeing more Dracula. Another thing is language itself. Despite having enough language and knowledge and comprehension, I think he writes very flowery, and it's not my preferred style. Like in some parts it works when he writes about haunting and describes the atmosphere, but then the bright example for me, I was listening to it in audiobook, and then there is a scene where Van Helsing starts hinting that it might be vampires. But he's not saying that he says, yes, we're all rational people, but like hypnosis is real. Is it so hard to believe that some of those things that also might be real? That's basically his point. But when I was listening, maybe I'm exaggerating, but it felt like I was listening for 5 minutes of him going on and on and on, and he didn't even start it about vampires existing yet. It's just like preamble to that, and again, just not my preferred style. And another thing is, man in this story feels so superior to everyone, especially women. Besides women, they also feel superior to barbarians in the Eastern Europe. And I understand that that's partially the theme of the story. Like, you can look it through lens of fear of foreigners. Like, oh, Dracula, a foreigner, barbaric guy, comes and gets all our women and they are dying. Like, very ugly sentiments that exist even today. But it's still annoying. But this is not the biggest offender. The biggest offender, how they treat women. In the story, there are 1.5 useful people. It's one Helsing. He's a half of a person because he has medical knowledge and he knows about vampires, but that's everything he does. And another person is Mina. She's smart, she organizes all the information, and everything happened they actually succeeded because of her. She's smart, she's amazing as a person, as she's clever, etc. However, the way they treat her and all other women, oh, but she's a woman, but she's so soft, we need to protect her. Given that, I know again that another theme of the story, like role of women in society, at the time the movement of new women was getting on, and it was becoming more acceptable, and people were fighting for the right to continue working, to get access to ballots, etc. And I get that, but for example, in the beginning, like first chapter, and we're we're not introduced to Mina, but Mina is mentioned because Jonathan Harker tries something yummy, and like, I need to get a recipe for my soon-to-be wife. They're not married yet. That's like everything we know about Mina. She's it's not her interest. Like, you're mentioning your wife and the only soon-to-be wife, they're not even engaged at that point, probably. And the only thing you think about, oh, she will cook for me? Like, it's so traditional, and the main offender of this, it's annoying. Another thing, yeah, I'm really good at complaining, is it's smaller one, but it's a bit anticlimactic ending. So through reading, we start seeing Dracula as this very powerful entity, very smart, very cunning, and then he's killed. And it's like few pages. So yeah, this wouldn't be that bad if you would see more of a Dracula, but we see him in the beginning, that we don't see him, and then he's dead. I did not enjoy that. So after all this complaining, why should you read this book? And here's 2 reasons I started enjoying it so much and I keep rereading. First of all, because it's done in format of letters, journal entries, newspaper clippings. Everything has a date, and there is, if you Google Dracula Daily, which puts it in chronological order. And you can even follow them and receive them on the days that those days are. So the first entry we have from Jonathan Harker in the whole story is 3rd of May. So on 3rd of May, you get that entry. And then it ends somewhere October, November. And sometimes you get like bigger chapters, sometimes smaller, but it allows you to get immersed more, and you read it in a smaller chunks, but still constantly enough that you feel more immersed. And you have more times to think it's true, and it's always like, it brings a lot of enjoyment. I read it like that twice, and I think I will be like half reading it like that 3rd time. And another thing is analysis. I watched so many analysis videos about Dracula, and there are so many themes to explore. And as I mentioned already, this anti-foreigner sentiment and East versus West. There's also modernity, because we see trains, we see portables, not stenograph, how it's called? Typing machine, which, yes, we might think as a bit old tech, but for that time it was innovation versus old war-torn country and count from that old country. So that theme, role of woman, but then there is also like sexuality and homoeroticism. This is actually very interesting. There are so many videos and articles. Look how vampires are bisexual. It's not directly related, but it's a lens to look through it. So how I'm reading it this time. First of all, I'm writing I'm annotating a book. I'm not sure how much you can see, but basically I write if I have any things, but mostly I'm underline. I don't have that many like complex thoughts to be brought directly to specific words, but I'm highlighting certain things, and also words like fear, superstitious, sleep, which are big themes. I put themes on the margins. I put my potential ideas or theories. For example, we have dogs howling in the first chapter, and then put, is it wolf? Like later we know that he actually knows difference between dogs and wolves, but like, can it mean something? For example, when they first meet, Jonathan Harker and Dracula, I wrote a comment. Submission and homoeroticism is a bit hard to separate from time-appropriate relationship without knowing that much of what was acceptable at the time and how it was perceived. So my notes on the topic might be far-reaching, because this is our topic I would like to annotate, but during, for example, their first meeting, he puts a coat on him and a blanket on his knees, because it's cold. So it's like caring gesture. It probably nothing bad, but idea about eroticism and seduction that it's very indirect, so it can also mean that. So that was a note that I wrote to myself. So this one thing, there is also comments like what's going on. We will return to this in a second, but I also have notes. First of all, I have this type of note. I don't know how much you can see, but basically I wrote things I want to follow, and then pages where I met this topic. Some of the things I try to track: anti-foreign sentiment, old, new, modernity, ancient, colonialism, east versus west, foreshadowing, forewarning, superiority, superstitions, death, sexuality, eroticism, seduction, homoeroticism. This is like 1 point. Gender, role of women, fear, submission, indulgence, taboo, curiosity, killed the cat, sleep, loss of time, dreamlike state. Some of these are based on some analysis videos I saw, like would be interesting to actually see how it's reflected in the text. Some of these are typical themes of Gothic novels, like for example, loss of time, sleep, and dreamlike state. And we already saw a few moments when Jonathan Harker, even before meeting Dracula, says that he might have been sleeping. So have Dracula come visit him before that? Or is it foreshadowing? I don't know, but it's fun to research. I also started a note, what do we actually know about Dracula? Because a lot of what we know is like from other types of media, and a lot of what we know in the story comes from what we heard from Van Helsing. And I'm not sure how reliable of narrator he is. Like, he thinks is what true, but he might be wrong, because at some point he says, he can turn big or small, and someone on the internet mentioned, well, why we never see him turn into giant Dracula and just stomp everyone, which is like a bit hilarious, but also like, yes, kind of why it doesn't happen. So far what I wrote: very red lips, tall, bright eyes looked red, sharp looking teeth, white as ivory, excellent German, sense of humor because at some point someone says, den die Tod reiten schnell, when das travels fast. It's from some other point, and he smiles, so he does have a sense of humor. Great strength, can control horses, question mark. Not sure how supernatural this aspect is. And wolves, definitely supernatural, and probably can see in the dark. That's so far my note. I guess I've promised to return to it and forgot. What's going on? I'm rereading and I read first chapter, and actually I start noticing moments that are not explained, and I decided to track them. First of all, when Jonathan Harker gets a first gift of a cross from a woman, but later he is mentioned to receive gifts from his fellow travelers, but it never mentioned what those gifts are. Later, when I'm pretty sure his driver is actually Dracula, gets him to the destination. At some point he leaves in the dark, and it's not clear why. Is he trying to scare Jonathan Harker? Is he going very quickly back to the castle to cook for him? Is he trying to, like, it's unclear why he leaves, because it's mentioned he's looking in the dark and Jonathan Harker can't actually see anything because it's so dark, and then he leaves and returns and shushes wolves. So what was he doing? Also, before that, the previous carriage rider tried to save Jonathan Harker by like, no one came, let's go. So maybe he went back to eat him. I don't know. I would like to know. Also, almost exactly after that, a blue flame is mentioned that Jonathan Harker can see through the Dracula. He thinks he's hallucinating, but probably not. And Dracula built a device from stones around this flame. What is that about? We never explained. And doing this, like, to sum up, yes, it's not maybe the most interesting plot, partially because we know a lot and we read and watched and know so much more engaging plots. So it's a bit both predictable and not interesting enough because of that. However, it's great for investigative reading and more engaged reading. So hopefully I convinced you to reread. Have you read? What is your rating? What do you think? I would really love to compare notes because maybe I'm missing something. I think it can be explored even more. So, would appreciate your comments.